The rain was coming down hard that November night in Los Angeles. The kind of rain that makes everyone want to just get home and curl up somewhere warm. Keanu Reeves felt that way too. He'd just wrapped up a 16-hour shoot and his body was screaming for rest. His clothes were still damp from the last outdoor scene they'd filmed. A black sedan pulled up to the studio gate. The production company had arranged it, like they always did when he worked late. Keanu slid into the backseat with a tired sigh, ready to zone out for the drive home. "Good evening, sir. How was your day?" The driver's voice was soft, polite, professional. "Long," Keanu said with a small smile. "But good. How about yours?" "Can't complain," the driver said, pulling out into traffic. Keanu leaned back and closed his eyes for a moment. But something made him open them again. Maybe it was years of paying attention to people. Maybe it was just instinct. But he found himself looking at the driver more closely. The man was maybe late 40s, early 50s. Hard to tell. He wore a button-down shirt and tie, clearly trying to look professional. But there were things that didn't quite fit. His hands on the steering wheel were rough, cracked in places. The kind of hands that had seen hard times. His shirt was clean and pressed, but it hung loose on his frame, like he'd lost weight recently. A lot of weight. Then Keanu noticed something else. Behind the passenger seat, partially hidden by a jacket, was a sleeping bag. Not the fancy camping kind. The worn, practical kind that someone might need for survival. Keanu's heart sank a little. He'd seen enough of the world to recognize the signs. "You been driving long?" Keanu asked, keeping his tone casual. "Few months with this company," the driver said. "I pick up shifts where I can. Rideshare mostly. Must keep you busy." "Yeah, it does." There was something in the way he said it, a weight behind the words. They drove in silence for a bit. The rain kept drumming on the roof of the car. Keanu watched the city lights blur past the window, but his mind was on the man in front of him. "Look, I don't mean to pry," Keanu said finally, "but are you doing okay?" The driver's shoulders tensed slightly. "I'm fine, sir. Thank you for asking. It's just, I noticed the sleeping bag. And I've been around enough to recognize when someone's going through something." The silence that followed was heavy. The driver kept his eyes on the road, but Keanu could see his jaw working, like he was fighting with himself about whether to say anything. "I'm sorry," the driver said finally. "I should have hidden that better. I know it's not professional." "That's not what I'm worried about," Keanu said gently. "I'm just asking if you're all right." Person to person. Another long pause. Then quietly, "I've been living in my car for about 8 months now." There it was. Out in the open. "I work 3 different gig jobs," the driver continued. The words coming faster now, like a dam had broken. "Rideshare, food delivery, anything I can get. I'm working all the time. But rent in this city, I couldn't keep up. Had some medical bills that wiped me out. Got evicted. And once you're out, it's almost impossible to get back in. First month, last month, security deposit, credit check. How am I supposed to save for all that when I'm barely making enough to eat?" His voice cracked a little on that last part. "I shower at the gym. I keep my clothes clean at the laundromat. I try to look presentable for work. But yeah, I sleep in the car between shifts, usually in a parking lot near the airport. Security doesn't bother you as much there." Keanu felt his chest tighten. Here was a man working himself to the bone, doing everything right and still falling through the cracks. "Do you have family?" Keanu asked. The driver's hands gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. "I have a daughter. 16, she lives with her mom. We're divorced. The medical bills, the stress, the fighting about money, it all fell apart. But my daughter, she doesn't know about this. About me being homeless. I'm too ashamed to tell her. She thinks I'm just busy with work. That's why I don't see her much anymore." His voice broke completely on that last sentence. Keanu saw him quickly wipe his eyes with one hand, trying to stay composed. "I used to be a construction supervisor," the driver said, almost to himself. "Had a good career. Good money. Then I got hurt on site. Needed surgery. No insurance. The bills just kept coming. Couldn't work while I recovered. Couldn't pay the rent. Everything just cascaded from there. And at my age, with a gap in my resume and a bad back, nobody wants to hire me for the jobs I used to do." They were getting close to Keanu's place now, but somehow neither of them wanted the conversation to end. "What's your name?" Keanu asked. "David," the driver said. "David, I'm Keanu, and I want you to know something. The fact that you're working 3 jobs and still showing up every day with dignity and professionalism, That's not failure. That's strength. The system failed you. You didn't fail yourself, David let out a shaky breath. Doesn't feel that way most days. They pulled up to Keanu's building. But instead of getting out immediately, Keanu sat there for a moment thinking. David, are you working tomorrow? I have a shift in the afternoon, yeah. Cancel it. David turned in his seat confused. Sir, I need a driver tomorrow. The whole day. Personal driver for some errands I need to run. I'll pay you directly. $500 for the day. David's eyes went wide. Sir, I can't. That's too much. I don't want charity. It's not charity, Keanu said firmly. I legitimately need someone I can trust tomorrow. Someone discreet, professional. Someone who won't leak my schedule to the press or take photos. You seem like that kind of person. Am I wrong? No, sir, but then it's a job. A real job. Be here tomorrow morning at 9. Bring your car. We'll get breakfast first, and then I've got several places I need to go. Deal? David stared at him, searching his face for something. Pity, maybe, or some kind of angle. But all he saw was genuine kindness. Deal, David said quietly. Keanu opened the door, then paused. And David? Pack that sleeping bag away tomorrow morning. You won't need it tomorrow night. He closed the door before David could respond, leaving the driver sitting there in confused silence as the rain continued to fall. David sat in his car for a long time after Keanu disappeared into the building. He looked down at his rough hands, at the worn interior of his car, at the sleeping bag he'd have to climb into in a few hours at the airport parking lot. A famous actor he'd just met had seen him. Really seen him. Not as a service provider or an invisible person behind the wheel, as a human being. He started the car and pulled away, something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. It took him a while to recognize what it was. It had been so long since he'd felt it. Hope David barely slept that night, not because of the uncomfortable backseat of his car, which he'd gotten used to by now, but because his mind wouldn't stop racing. What did Keanu mean about not needing the sleeping bag? Was it just a kind thing to say or something more? Part of him was scared to hope. He'd been disappointed so many times before. He woke up at 6, even though he didn't need to be at Keanu's place until 9. He drove to the gym, took a long shower, and shaved carefully. He used the last of his nice cologne, the bottle he'd been rationing for important occasions. He pressed his shirt in the locker room with a portable steamer he kept in his trunk. If this was really a job, he was going to show up looking his absolute best. By 8:45, David was parked outside Keanu's building, hands drumming nervously on the steering wheel. What kind of errands could a movie star possibly need him for? Picking up dry cleaning? Dropping off scripts? Maybe a trip to some fancy meeting? At exactly 9, Keanu emerged from the building. He wasn't dressed like a celebrity. Just jeans, a simple jacket, and a genuine smile. He was carrying 2 paper coffee cups. Morning, David, he said, sliding into the front passenger seat. Not the back. The front. Good morning, Mr. Reeves. It's Keanu, please. He handed David one of the cups. Black, 2 sugars, right? That's what you had in the cup holder last night. David stared at the cup, then at Keanu. This man had remembered how he took his coffee from a single detail in a passing glance. Thank you. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Now, first stop. There's a diner about 10 minutes from here. Betty's Kitchen. You know it? David nodded, still processing that Keanu Reeves was sitting in his front seat, drinking coffee like they were old friends. The diner was the kind of place that had seen better decades. Cracked vinyl booths, a counter with spinning stools, and a waitress who called everyone Hon. They slid into a corner booth, and Keanu ordered the biggest breakfast on the menu. Then he looked at David expectantly. Just coffee for me, David said. David, when's the last time you had a real meal? The question hung there. David felt his face get hot. I eat. That's not what I asked. Yesterday. I ate yesterday. Keanu turned to the waitress. Bring him the same thing I'm having. And some orange juice. When the waitress left, David started to protest, but Keanu held up a hand. You're working for me today. That means you eat on my dime. Besides, the errands might take a while. You'll need your energy. The food came, and David tried to eat slowly with dignity. But the truth was he was starving. He'd been rationing granola bars and dollar menu items for so long that a real breakfast felt like luxury. Tell me about before, Keanu said between bites. Before everything went wrong. What was your life like? And so David talked, about his years in construction, about working his way up from a general laborer to a supervisor, about the pride he felt when he'd drive past buildings and know he'd helped build them, about his daughter's laugh when she was little, about weekend barbecues and paying bills on time and never worrying about where he'd sleep. What happened exactly? Keanu asked. The injury? David set down his fork. Fell off a scaffold. Broke my back in 2 places. Needed surgery, physical therapy, the works. I was out of work for 4 months. The company fought the workers' comp claim, said I wasn't following safety protocols. By the time the legal stuff got sorted out, I'd already lost my apartment. My wife and I were fighting constantly. The stress, the bills, the pain. She asked for a divorce. I didn't blame her. I was a mess. And your daughter? Her name's Riley, she's 16 now. Smart as hell, wants to be an architect. She probably got that from watching me work all those years, looking at blueprints at the kitchen table. David's voice got thick. I used to be her hero, you know? Now I can't even face her. Can't let her see what I've become. Keanu leaned forward. David, you're working 3 jobs while living in your car. You're still showing up every day, staying clean, staying professional. That's not weakness. That's heroic, David shook his head. Heroes don't sleep in parking lots. Heroes keep going when everything is stacked against them, Keanu said quietly. I know something about loss, David. I've lost people I loved. I've lost people I thought I couldn't live without. And I learned that there's no shame in struggling. The shame is in a society that lets good people fall through the cracks. They sat there for a moment, 2 men from completely different worlds connected by their shared humanity. Come on, Keanu said finally. We've got places to be. The next stop confused David. It was a real estate office. Keanu told him to wait in the car, that he'd just be a few minutes. But David watched through the window as Keanu sat down with an agent, pointing at papers, signing things. What could he possibly be doing? Then they went to a bank. Again, Keanu went in alone. This time he was gone longer, maybe 20 minutes. When he came back, he had a folder under his arm and an unreadable expression on his face. One more stop, Keanu said. They drove to a neighborhood David knew. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe. Clean. The kind of place where working people lived. Keanu directed him to a modest apartment complex called Riverside Gardens. It was 3 stories, well-maintained with a little courtyard in the middle. Park here, Keanu said. David parked, his confusion growing. Was Keanu visiting someone? Did he have a friend who lived here? Come with me, Keanu said. Are you sure? I can wait in the car. I need you to come with me, David. They took the elevator to the 3rd floor. David followed Keanu down a quiet hallway, past doors with welcome mats and the faint sounds of life behind them. Keanu stopped at Unit 307. He pulled a key from his pocket. Keanu, what's going on? Keanu unlocked the door and pushed it open. See for yourself. David stepped inside and froze. It was a 1-bedroom apartment. Not huge, but perfect. A couch sat in the living room. A small dining table. The kitchen was compact, but had everything you'd need. Through an open door, he could see a bedroom with an actual bed, made up with fresh sheets. The refrigerator hummed in the corner. I don't understand, David said, his voice barely a whisper. Keanu held out the key. It's yours. 1 year's rent paid in full. Security deposit covered. Utilities set up in your name. Also prepaid for 3 months to give you some breathing room. David stared at the key like it was a live grenade. No, I can't. This is too much. I can't accept this. Why not? Because I haven't earned it. Because it's charity. Because I'm not a charity case. The words came out harder than he meant them to. Keanu's expression didn't change. You work 3 jobs, David. You've been working yourself to the bone for 8 months while living in your car. You're one of the hardest working people I've ever met. The system is broken, not you. You didn't fail. The system failed you. But I can't pay you back. I don't want you to pay me back. I want you to have a place to sleep. A place to shower. A place where you can be human again. Is that so wrong? David's eyes were burning. His throat felt tight. Why? Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me. Keanu stepped closer. Because someone should have done it months ago. Because you deserve stability. Because everyone deserves a chance to rebuild. And because I can. I have more money than I could ever spend, David. I can't fix the whole system, but I can help one person. I can help you. The dam broke. David's legs gave out and he sank onto the couch, his face in his hands. Years of held-back emotions came pouring out. The fear, the shame, the exhaustion, the relief. All of it. Keanu sat down beside him, not saying anything, just being there. When David finally caught his breath, he looked around the apartment again. At the real walls instead of car windows. At the bed instead of a back seat. At the kitchen where he could make real food. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Say you'll stay here tonight. Say you'll let yourself rest, and tomorrow we'll figure out the next steps together." David looked at the key in his palm. It was small, just a piece of metal, but it represented everything. Safety, dignity, a second chance. "Thank you," he said, and those two words carried the weight of 8 months of desperation and a lifetime of gratitude. Keanu smiled. "Thank me by getting back on your feet. Thank me by being there for your daughter. Thank me by being proof that one person's kindness can change everything." That night, David moved his few belongings from his car into apartment 307. He took a long shower in a bathroom that was his. He made a simple meal in a kitchen that was his. And when he finally lay down in a real bed in a room that was his, he cried again. But this time they were tears of hope. The first morning David woke up in the apartment, he thought it was a dream. He lay there for a solid minute, just staring at the ceiling, waiting to wake up in his car with a crick in his neck and someone banging on the window telling him to move along. But the ceiling stayed. The soft mattress stayed. The quiet hum of the refrigerator stayed. It was real. He got up and made coffee in his own kitchen. He stood at the window, watching the sunrise over the courtyard, sipping from a mug instead of a paper cup from a gas station. Such a small thing, such a huge thing. His phone buzzed. A text from Keanu. "How'd you sleep?" David smiled and typed back, "Like I forgot what sleeping felt like." "Good. Meet me for lunch at 1. Same diner. I want to talk about next steps." Next steps. David liked the sound of that. It meant this wasn't just a one-time thing. It meant Keanu was serious about helping him rebuild. At the diner, Keanu was waiting with someone else. A woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a professional manner. "David, this is Patricia. She's a job placement counselor. Works with people who are getting back into the workforce after gaps in employment." Patricia shook his hand firmly. "Keanu told me about your situation. I want to help." Over lunch, Patricia asked him questions about his work history, his skills, his limitations with his back injury. She took notes, nodding thoughtfully. "Construction supervision is valuable experience," she said. "The problem is, you're right that most sites won't take someone with a back injury for physical labor. But there are related fields that need your expertise without the physical demands. Property management, for instance. Project coordination. Safety inspection. You've got decades of knowledge that companies need." "I never thought about it that way," David admitted. "That's because when you're in survival mode, you can't see the big picture," Patricia said. "But I can. Send me your old resume. We'll update it, highlight your transferable skills, and get you in front of the right people." David felt something stirring in his chest. Not just hope. Actual possibility. "In the meantime," Keanu said, "keep doing the rideshare work. But now that you have a stable address, you can be more selective. Take better shifts. Rest when you need to. Take care of yourself." Over the next few weeks, everything changed. With an address and a place to store clean clothes, David's rideshare ratings shot up. Passengers commented on how professional he was, how clean his car was. He started getting requests from regular clients who wanted him specifically. The money got a little better. Patricia worked with him on his resume, teaching him how to frame his experience in a way that highlighted his value. She coached him through practice interviews, helping him address the employment gap without shame. "You weren't unemployed," she reminded him. "You were working multiple jobs while experiencing temporary housing instability. That shows resilience and dedication. Any good employer will respect that." Then came the breakthrough. Patricia sent his resume to a friend of hers who managed a portfolio of apartment buildings across the city. They were looking for someone to oversee maintenance and small renovations across their properties. Someone who understood construction, could manage contractors, and could spot problems before they became expensive disasters. David's interview was on a Tuesday morning. He wore a shirt Keanu had insisted on buying him, saying every man needed at least one good interview outfit. David had protested, but Keanu had just smiled and said, "Let me do this. You're going to pay it forward someday. I know you will." The interview went better than David could have imagined. The hiring manager, a straightforward guy named Tom, looked at his resume, and immediately started asking technical questions about building codes, contractor management, and problem solving. This was David's world. He knew this stuff cold. "I see you had a gap here," Tom said, pointing at the resume. David took a breath, remembering Patricia's coaching. "I experienced housing instability after a work injury and medical crisis. I stayed employed through that period, but it was rough. I won't lie about that. But I never stopped working, and I never lost my knowledge or my work ethic." Tom looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "You know what I respect? Honesty. And the fact that you kept going. That tells me more about your character than a perfect resume ever could." David got the call 3 days later. He got the job, $48,000 a year with benefits, health insurance, retirement matching, things he thought he'd never have again. When he called Keanu to tell him, he could barely get the words out. "I knew you would," Keanu said simply. "I knew it from that first night. You just needed a chance. The job changed everything." With stable income, David could actually save money. He could buy groceries instead of scraping by on dollar menu items. He could afford to maintain his car properly instead of driving it into the ground. And most importantly, he could start thinking about the future instead of just surviving the present. But the biggest change was internal. Having meaningful work again, work that used his brain and his experience, gave David back something he'd lost: his sense of purpose. He wasn't just a guy trying to make it through another day. He was a professional again. He was valuable again. At the properties he managed, David found himself seeing things his colleagues missed. He'd spot a minor crack in a foundation that would become a major problem in a year. He'd notice a contractor cutting corners. He'd find ways to solve problems that saved the company money, Tom noticed. "You've got an eye for this," he told David after David caught a contractor trying to use substandard materials. "Best hire I've made in years." But David also noticed something else. He saw tenants struggling, facing the same kinds of crises he'd just escaped. A single mom who'd lost her job and was 2 months behind on rent. An older couple hit with unexpected medical bills. People who were one bad month away from the same spiral he'd experienced. He couldn't just ignore it. "Tom," David said one day, "what if we had a grace period program for tenants who hit temporary rough patches? Give them 60 days to get back on their feet instead of immediately starting eviction proceedings. I think we'd lose less money in the long run. Empty units cost us more than working with people who want to stay." Tom considered it. "You speaking from experience?" "Yeah, I am." "Then let's try it. Pilot program. You manage it." The program worked. In the first 3 months, David helped 5 families avoid eviction. All 5 got back on track. None of them left, which meant no lost rent during turnover, no costs for cleaning and repairing units, no advertising for new tenants. Financially, it made sense. But for David, it was personal. Each person he helped was a version of himself he was saving. One evening, 6 months after moving into apartment 307, David sat on his couch and realized something. He felt stable. Not just surviving, but actually stable. He had money in savings. He had health insurance. He had a job he was good at. He had a home. It was time for the hardest next step. He picked up his phone and stared at it for 10 minutes before finally calling his ex-wife, Christine. "Hello?" Her voice was cautious. They hadn't spoken in over a year. "Christine, it's David." Silence. Then, "Are you okay?" "I am now. I need to tell you something. I need to tell you everything." Over the next hour, David told her the truth. About the homelessness. About sleeping in his car. About being too ashamed to see Riley. About hitting rock bottom and finding help. About the apartment, the job, the rebuild. Christine was quiet for a long time after he finished. "Why didn't you tell me? I would have helped. I was too ashamed. And too proud. And I didn't want to burden you after everything I'd already put you through." "David, Riley thinks you abandoned her. She thinks you don't care." The words hit him like a physical blow. "I care, God, I care so much. That's why I stayed away. I didn't want her to see me like that. She needs to see you now. She needs to know the truth. Will she want to?" Christine's voice softened. "Call her. Tell her what you told me. She deserves to know her father is a fighter, not a quitter." That night, David called his daughter for the first time in over a year. His hands shook as he dialed. "Hello?" Riley's voice was guarded. "Riley, it's Dad." A pause. "Why are you calling?" "Because I owe you an explanation. And because I miss you. Can we meet? Can I take you to dinner?" I need to tell you something important. Another pause, longer this time. Okay, this Saturday. When they hung up, David sat in his apartment, his heart pounding. He'd faced homelessness. He'd rebuilt his life. But nothing scared him more than facing his daughter and telling her the truth. But it was time. It was past time. And thanks to Keanu giving him a chance, he finally had something to show her. That even when you hit bottom, you can climb back up. Saturday arrived too quickly and not fast enough. David changed his shirt 3 times before settling on a simple button down. He kept checking his reflection in the mirror, seeing a man who looked put together on the outside while feeling like a nervous wreck on the inside. He'd chosen a casual restaurant, the kind of place where they could actually talk. Not too fancy, not too loud, somewhere comfortable. He arrived 15 minutes early and sat in his car, rehearsing what he'd say. Every version sounded wrong in his head. Then he saw her walking across the parking lot and his breath caught. Riley was 16 now, almost a young woman. She looked so much like her mother. But she had his eyes, his determined walk. She was wearing a hoodie and jeans, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Her face carefully neutral. David got out of his car, and they stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. "Hi, sweetheart," he said. "Hey." Her voice was flat, guarded. She didn't move closer. "Thanks for coming. I know you didn't have to. Mom said it was important." She crossed her arms. "So what's this about? Let's get a table first, please." Inside, they sat across from each other in a booth. The air between them was thick with everything unsaid. Riley looked at the menu without really seeing it, clearly waiting for him to start talking. The waitress came and went. They ordered. And then there was nothing left to hide behind. "Riley, I need to tell you something," David began. "And it's going to be hard to hear. But I need you to know the truth about why I haven't been around." She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "You were busy with work." "I know. No." He shook his head. "That's not the truth. The truth is that for the past year I was homeless. I was living in my car." Riley's eyes went wide. Whatever she'd been expecting, it wasn't that. "I didn't want you to know," David continued, his voice steady even though his hands were shaking under the table. "I was ashamed. I felt like a failure. You always looked up to me and I couldn't stand the thought of you seeing me like that. So I stayed away. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You were homeless." Riley's voice was barely a whisper. "But you always seemed fine when we talked on the phone. I was calling from parking lots trying to sound normal, trying to pretend everything was okay. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ask for help?" David felt his eyes getting hot. "Because I was your dad. I was supposed to protect you and provide for you. How could I admit I couldn't even provide for myself?" Riley was quiet for a moment, processing. What happened? How did it get that bad? So David told her everything. The work injury, the medical bills, the spiral of debt and eviction. Working 3 jobs and still not being able to afford a place to live. Sleeping in his car, showering at gyms, trying to maintain some dignity while everything fell apart around him. "I kept working," he said. "I never stopped trying. But the system, Riley, it's designed to keep people down once they fall. You can't get an apartment without money. Can't save money without an apartment. It's a trap." "So what changed?" Riley asked. "How are you here now?" David told her about that rainy night. About driving a passenger who noticed his sleeping bag. About Keanu Reeves refusing to look away from someone in need. "He gave you an apartment?" Riley's voice was incredulous. "He gave me a chance," David corrected. "He saw me as a person, not a problem. And because of that, I got back on my feet. Got a real job. Got stable again." Riley sat back, trying to take it all in. "So you've been going through all this and you didn't think I should know? You thought I'd rather believe you just didn't want to see me?" The pain in her voice cut him deeper than anything else could have. "I made the wrong choice," David said. "I was trying to protect you, but I ended up hurting you. And I'm sorry. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I'm just asking for a chance to be your dad again. To be in your life again. I have an apartment now. A steady job. I can be there for you like I should have been all along." Tears were running down Riley's face. "I thought you didn't care anymore. I thought maybe you'd started a new life and just forgot about me." "Never." David reached across the table, and after a moment, Riley put her hand in his. "Not for one single day. You were the reason I kept going. The thought of seeing you again, of making you proud again, that's what got me through the worst of it." They sat there holding hands, both crying quietly while their food got cold. "Can I see it?" Riley asked finally. "Your apartment? You want to?" "Yeah, I want to see where you live." After they finished eating, David drove Riley to Riverside Gardens. As they walked up to Unit 307, he felt nervous all over again. What if she thought it was too small, too plain? What if it reminded her of how far they'd fallen? But when he opened the door, Riley just walked in slowly, looking around. She went to the kitchen, the bedroom, the living room. She stood at the window looking out at the courtyard. "It's nice," she said finally. "It's small, but it's nice. It's clean. It feels safe." "It is safe," David said. "And it's home." Riley turned to look at him. "Can I come visit sometimes?" "Like actually visit, not just see you at restaurants." David felt his throat close up. "Riley, you can come whenever you want. I'll give you a key. You can come after school, on weekends, whenever. I want you here. I want to be here too," she said quietly. "I missed you, Dad. Even when I was mad at you, I missed you. I missed you too, sweetheart. Every single day." Over the next few months, David and Riley slowly rebuilt their relationship. She started coming over once or twice a week. They'd have dinner together, watch movies, or just talk. David helped her with homework. They'd go for walks in the neighborhood. Simple things. Normal things. Things David had thought he'd never have again. Riley told him about her dream of becoming an architect. David pulled out some of his old blueprints from his construction days, and they'd spread them out on the dining table, with David explaining how buildings went together. Riley's eyes would light up, asking questions, making connections. "You know," David told her one evening, "you get that from being around construction sites when you were little. Remember when I'd bring you to work sometimes on Saturdays?" "I remember," Riley said, smiling. "I remember thinking my dad could build anything. Maybe not anything, but I tried." "You're still trying," Riley said. "That's what matters." At work, David's reputation continued to grow. The Grace Period program was so successful that Tom expanded it across all their properties. David trained other property managers on how to work with struggling tenants, teaching them that compassion and good business weren't mutually exclusive. One day, a local news station reached out. They'd heard about the Grace Period program and wanted to do a story on it. Tom asked David if he'd be willing to be interviewed. "We don't have to mention your history," Tom said. "Just talk about the program." But David thought about it and decided differently. "No," he said. "I want to tell my story. I want people to know that homelessness can happen to anyone, that working people can end up on the streets through no fault of their own, and that sometimes one person's kindness can change everything." The interview aired on a Thursday evening. David sat on his couch watching it, Riley beside him. When David talked about being homeless despite working 3 jobs, Riley squeezed his hand. When he talked about the stranger who gave him a chance without mentioning Keanu by name. Respecting his privacy, Riley leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Dad," she said when it was over. "I'm proud of you too, kid, for giving me another chance." The response to the interview was overwhelming. David's phone buzzed constantly with messages from old friends and colleagues he hadn't heard from in years. Some apologized for losing touch. Others shared their own struggles. Several organizations reached out, asking if David would speak at events for homeless individuals, sharing his story of recovery. David said yes. He started speaking at shelters, at job fairs, at community centers. He looked people in the eye who were living the nightmare he'd escaped and told them, "You're not invisible. You're not worthless. You're one chance away from getting your life back. Keep going. Keep trying. Your breakthrough might be tomorrow." After one such talk, a woman approached him. She was maybe 50, thin, wearing clothes that had seen better days. "I sleep in my car," she said quietly. 3 months now. I work at a hospital, in the kitchen, but I can't afford first and last month's rent plus deposit. Your story gave me hope." David pulled out his wallet and gave her his business card. "Call me Monday. We have an opening in one of our buildings. I'll work something out for you. Nobody should have to sleep in their car while working full-time." That night, David called Keanu. They talked regularly now. Not as a celebrity and someone he'd helped, but as friends. "I did something today," David said. "I helped someone get into an apartment, waived some fees, set up a payment plan." "That's great, David. Oh, I did it because of you. Because you showed me that one person can make a difference." "No," Keanu said gently. "You did it because you're a good person who remembers what it's like. That's all you, my friend. Riley was spending more and more time at David's apartment. One Friday evening, she showed up with a duffel bag. Mom and I were talking, she said. What if I stayed here on weekends? Like regularly, if that's okay with you? David felt his eyes well up. That's more than okay. That's perfect, and it was. On weekends, David would wake up to Riley making breakfast in the kitchen. They'd work on her architecture portfolio together. They'd go to hardware stores, and David would teach her about materials and structures. They'd build the kind of relationship he thought he'd lost forever. One year after that rainy night when everything changed, David stood in his apartment with Riley looking around at the life they'd rebuilt together. You know what I realized? Riley said. You didn't give up. Even when you had every reason to, you didn't give up. That's the coolest thing about you, Dad. David pulled her into a hug. I had you to fight for. That made all the difference. Everything wasn't perfect. David still had hard days. He still struggled sometimes with the trauma of what he'd been through. But he had a home. He had his daughter. He had meaningful work. And he had the knowledge that he'd survived the worst and come out the other side. Most importantly, he had the chance to pay forward the kindness that had saved him. It was a Tuesday morning, almost 18 months after that rainy night, when David's phone rang with a number he hadn't expected to see. Keanu, hey, my friend. Keanu's familiar voice came through. You got time to meet for coffee this week? I want to run something by you. They met at the same diner where they'd had breakfast that life-changing morning. Walking into that place now felt surreal to David. So much had changed. He had changed. Keanu was already in their old booth, 2 coffees waiting. Some things stayed the same. You look good, Keanu said as David slid in across from him. Really good. I feel good, David said honestly. Better than I have in years. Riley's coming over tonight. We're making dinner together. It's funny how the simple things feel like miracles now. They kind of are miracles, Keanu said. We just forget that sometimes. They talked for a while about life. David shared stories about work, about the tenants he'd helped, about Riley's latest architecture project for school. Keanu listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at the funny parts. Then Keanu got serious. David, I want to talk to you about something. I've been thinking a lot about what happened with you, about how many other people are out there working their tails off but still ending up homeless. Good people. People who just need one break. I think about that too, David said. Every day. I see them at the properties. I see them when I'm driving around. And I think, that was me. That's still almost me, just one bad month away. Exactly. So I've been working on something. I want to start a foundation. A real one. Focused specifically on working homeless people. People with jobs who can't afford housing. Give them what I gave you, a year of rent paid in full. Time to save up, get stable, rebuild. David felt his heart rate pick up. That's incredible. But here's the thing. I can fund it. I can get it set up. But I need someone to run it. Someone who understands what these people are going through. Someone who knows the system from the inside. Someone they'll trust because they've been there. David stared at him. You want me to run it? I want you to help design it and run it, yes. You'd still have your job. This would be part-time at first, helping me figure out how it should work. But eventually, if it grows like I think it will, it could be full-time. A real career helping people get second chances. David sat back, overwhelmed. Keanu, I don't know if I'm qualified. You're the most qualified person I know. You lived it. You rebuilt from it. And I've watched you help people for the past year. You're already doing this work, David. I'm just asking if you want to do it on a bigger scale. David thought about the woman from the hospital kitchen who'd approached him after his speech, about the families he'd helped through the grace period program, about every person he'd looked in the eye and said, You're not invisible. Yes, he said. Yes, I want to do this. They spent the next several weeks planning. David worked with lawyers and accountants learning the nonprofit world. He helped write the mission statement, design the application process, and establish the criteria. They decided to focus on people who were working at least 30 hours a week, but still couldn't afford housing. No drugs, no alcohol, just bad luck and a broken system. They called it the Second Chance Living Program. Simple, direct, honest. Finding the first location was easy. Tom, David's boss, offered to partner with them, providing apartments at a discounted rate. Other property owners heard about the program and reached out, wanting to be involved. The harder part was choosing the first resident. They had 47 applications in the first week. 47 people working full-time jobs while sleeping in cars and shelters on friends' couches. Each application was a story that broke David's heart because he saw himself in everyone. They chose a woman named Helen. She was 52, working as a janitor at a hospital. Her husband had died 3 years earlier, and medical bills from his final illness had wiped her out. She'd been living in her car for 2 years, showering at the hospital before her shifts, eating whatever she could afford from vending machines. David met her at the apartment they'd set up. It was similar to his own, modest but clean, fully furnished, ready to be a home. When he handed Helen the keys, she stood there holding them like they were made of glass. "Why me?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "There are younger people, people with kids, people who—" "Because you deserve it," David said. "Because you've been working yourself to exhaustion and getting nowhere through no fault of your own. Because everyone deserves a safe place to sleep. That's why." Helen moved in that day. A week later, David checked on her. She decorated a little, photos on the fridge, a plant in the window, a welcome mat at the door. She was starting to make it home. "I sleep through the night now," she told him. "I haven't done that in 2 years. I didn't realize how much the fear was eating me alive. Fear of someone knocking on my window, fear of being moved along, fear of my car breaking down and losing even that." "I know exactly what you mean," David said. Over the next year, the program grew. They helped 23 people. Not all of them made it. A few fell back into old patterns, couldn't handle the stability, or had issues David and the team weren't equipped to handle. But 18 of them successfully transitioned to permanent housing and stable employment. 18 people got their lives back. David's role in the program grew too. He transitioned to full-time, becoming the director of operations. He hired staff, most of them people who'd experienced homelessness themselves. He trained them to see the residents not as charity cases, but as people who'd been failed by a system that let full-time workers go homeless. Riley was incredibly proud. She came to the program's 1-year anniversary event, watching her father give a speech about second chances and human dignity. Afterward, she introduced herself to some of the residents, telling them about her dad's story, about how he'd been where they were. "Your dad saved my life," Helen told Riley. "Him and Mr. Reeves. They saw me when everyone else looked right through me." Riley squeezed her dad's hand. "He's good at that. Seeing people." The anniversary event drew media attention, and this time Keanu agreed to be there. He'd stayed out of the spotlight until now, wanting the focus on the program, not on his celebrity. But David convinced him that his presence would draw attention to the issue, and Keanu agreed. The local news covered it, then some national outlets picked it up. The story of a movie star who quietly gave a homeless man a chance and how that man turned around and built a program to help others resonated with people. Donations poured in. Other cities reached out, wanting to replicate the model. During the event, a reporter asked Keanu why he'd started this foundation. "I met someone who changed how I see this issue," Keanu said, gesturing to David. "I met a man who was working 3 jobs and still sleeping in his car. The system had failed him in every way. And I realized that if it could happen to someone that dedicated, that hardworking, it could happen to anyone. These aren't lazy people. These aren't people looking for handouts. They're people who need one break, one chance, one moment of stability to get back on their feet." Then he turned to David. "This man right here, he's proof that one chance can change everything. Not just for that person, but for everyone they go on to help. That's the ripple effect. That's why this matters." David stood up to speak, looking out at the crowd. He saw residents of the program. He saw donors and volunteers. He saw Tom from his property management job. He saw Patricia, the job counselor who'd helped him. He saw Riley and Christine sitting together. He saw his whole rebuilt life in that room. "A little over a year ago, I was the most invisible person you'd never see," David began. "I worked constantly but lived in my car. I was drowning and no one threw me a rope. Until one person did. One person chose to see me as human. And that changed everything." He looked at Keanu. "You gave me an apartment. But more than that, you gave me back my dignity. You showed me that my circumstances didn't define my worth. And now I get to pay that forward every single day." He turned back to the crowd. "There are thousands of people in this city right now who are working full-time jobs but sleeping in cars, in shelters on the streets. They're not statistics. They're not problems to solve. They're people. They're mothers and fathers. They're veterans and teachers and nurses and janitors. They're us. Any one of us could be them with one bad break. David's voice got stronger. This program is about more than housing. It's about recognizing that the system is broken, not the people caught in it. It's about giving people the stability they need to rebuild. And it's about proving that when we choose to see each other, when we choose compassion over judgment, incredible things can happen. He paused, looking around the room. I'm standing here today because one person chose kindness. Now we're helping others because we choose kindness. And I believe that everyone here tonight has the power to do the same. See the people others overlook. Offer a hand when you can. Be the person who changes someone's story. Because I promise you it matters more than you can imagine. The room erupted in applause. Riley was crying, proud tears streaming down her face. Keanu was smiling that quiet smile of his, the one that said more than words ever could. After the event, as people mingled and shared stories, Helen approached David and Keanu. I want to do what he does, she said, pointing at David. I want to help run this program. I want to be there for the next person, the way you both were there for me. David looked at Keanu, who nodded. Then let's make that happen, David said. That night, David drove home to his apartment, the one that had started everything. Riley had stayed over, making herself comfortable in what had become her second home. When he walked in, she was at the dining table working on blueprints for a school project. Hey, Dad, how'd it go? Really good, sweetheart. Really good. Riley looked up, studying his face. You happy? David thought about it. About the years of struggle. About sleeping in his car. About the shame and fear and exhaustion. About that rainy night when everything changed. About this moment right now with his daughter in his home working toward her dreams while he lived his second chance. Yeah, he said. I am. Good. You deserve it. David sat down next to her, looking at her architectural drawings. You know what I learned through all this? Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things we do. I wouldn't wish what I went through on anyone. But it gave me purpose. It showed me what really matters. What really matters? Riley asked. People, connection, kindness. The choice to see each other as human beings instead of just passing by. That's what saves lives. That's what saved mine. Riley nodded, understanding more than most 16-year-olds could. She'd seen her father at his lowest and watched him rise. She'd learned lessons about resilience and compassion that no classroom could teach. I'm going to put that in my building someday, she said. Design them so people feel seen. So they feel human. So everyone has dignity. David smiled, pulling her into a side hug. You're going to change the world, kid. Learn from the best, she said. Later that night, after Riley had gone to bed in her room, David stood at his window looking out at the courtyard. He thought about all the people sleeping in cars tonight, all the people working themselves to exhaustion, with nothing to show for it, all the people one bad break away from losing everything. He couldn't help them all, but he could help some, and those some would help others. And the ripples would keep spreading. His phone buzzed. A text from Keanu. Proud of you, my friend. Proud of what we're building. David smiled and typed back. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when I was invisible. You were never invisible. The world just wasn't looking. Glad I did. David set down his phone and took one last look around his apartment. At the couch where he'd first broken down in gratitude. At the kitchen where he'd made his first real meal in months. At the door to Riley's room where his daughter slept safely. One person's kindness had changed his life. Now he spent every day changing others' lives. The cycle of compassion continued, growing stronger with each person it touched. And it all started with a simple choice,